10 minutes remaining.
Are you struggling to finish your AP English exam in the time allotted? Well, have no fear. We're here to help you. So the first section of the exam is your multiple choice. This is going to include 55 questions. You're going to have an hour to complete all of these, so make sure you pace yourself correctly. And it's going to be 4 to 5 passages. These can either be prose or poetry passages depending on the year and certain test.
During the multiple choice, there's 8 different kinds of questions you may see.
First is reading comprehension. These types of questions will test your ability to understand the passage and what you've picked up as you've read it.
Number 2, inference. You will have to identify the author's purpose without them explicitly stating it. You may have to use your prior knowledge for these types of questions.
So for number 3, we have identifying and interpreting figurative language. These types of questions will ask you to analyze the meaning of a specific device, such as simile, metaphor, or personification, as well as identify why the author included them in their specific piece of work.
Number 4 is literary techniques. You'll have to identify techniques such as tone, word choice, and diction, and you will have to identify how they contribute to the meaning of the work as a whole.
Number 5, character analysis. These types of questions will ask you to interpret characters' development and how their attitudes change or do not change throughout the work or the piece, as well as to analyze their general characteristics as well as their motivations.
Number 6, these are passage questions, and typically these refer you back to a specific line or line number and ask you how that line contributes to the meaning or certain vocabulary about a word or any figurative language that is involved in that. And typically these questions don't take a lot of time because the answer can easily be found. So if you're running out of time, I would answer these questions.
Number 7 are structure questions. These are going to ask you about the structure of the passage as well as how the thoughts are organized within that.
Number 8, grammar. With these questions, you might have to identify a specific part of speech that a word is, or you might have to identify how the specific grammar relates to the meaning of the work as a whole. Here are some helpful tips for the multiple choice section. Number 1, underline keywords and phrases. Underlining them will make it easier if you have to refer back to that section or if there's a question about it, and it just helps you get the whole meaning.
So the second one is to read everything on the page. This includes the title, author, year written, and any footnotes or definitions there are. That way that you can know kind of what was happening during that time period or refer back to some words you may not know that are explained in the footnotes.
The third helpful tip is to scan questions before reading the passage. This way you know what the questions are asking about, so if it refers to a specific part, you can make sure to pay extra attention to that and mark up that whole section.
And the next one is going to be to answer every question. So on the AP exam, no points are deducted for incorrect answers. You're only adding up points for every correct answer you put. So if you answer every question, that gives you a better chance of adding up more points rather than leaving them blank and not getting any.
The 5th tip is to annotate and read the whole entire passage. Doing this, you can better understand it and just get the deeper meaning.
Number 6, you're going to use your prior answers to narrow down the other questions. This way, if there's any questions that have similar answers or some of them are asking similar things, you can kind of look back at the ones you've already answered and be able to eliminate some answer choices from other ones.
And if you follow all of these tips,
you'll be sure to ace the multiple choice.
So moving on to the second part of the exam, which is the FRQs. So you're going to have 3 questions in the span of 2 hours, and those 3 questions are going to be...
The first one will be a poetry-based essay. The second one will be a prose essay, and the third one is a novel choice. My tip to you would be to read through all of them first, and whichever one you're most comfortable with is to start with that one.
So you have 2 hours for 3 questions, so they suggest around 40 minutes for each, but you're also given a 15-minute reading period. It's read through all of them during the reading period and go ahead and get your order so that you know which one you're going to go to after each one.
So first, the Q1, aka the poetry essay. The first thing you're going to do is start by reading the prompt. So typically at the end of the prompt, it's going to ask how specific parts of the poem, such as imagery or diction, contributes to the meaning of the work as a whole, aka the theme. So quick tip about that, never say theme in your essay. That just shows you don't really know what you're talking about.
True.
So you're going to read the prompt and you're going to want to identify some key action words like analyze or explain. And you also want to pay careful attention to things that they're looking for, such as relationships between people rather than just a person. If the poem is talking about a person, sometimes it will be talking about inanimate objects or other organisms such as plants.
True. And a key thing is that if it says relationship, only talk about one relationship. And if it says relationships, then you have to talk about two or multiple. You have to be very specific as to what the prompt is asking you and only talk about what it's asking you, because if you go beyond that, you most likely won't get higher than a 3. And no one wants that.
All right, so read the prompt, make sure you do what it says, because if you don't address the prompt correctly, you're not going to get a good grade. Next, you're going to want to read the poem and analyze it. So the first thing you're going to do is just quickly read through the poem, try and get a basic understanding of what it's trying to say, maybe find out the literal meaning or the theme. And then you're going to want to go back through and identify points of imagery, points of key structure, shifts in tone, some rhythm. If it has a rhyme scheme, you want to pay careful attention to that. So then you're going to want to plan out your essay. Now, you do not want to write your essay by literary device.
Do not.
Don't do it. Just don't do it. My tip would be to go through chronologically or by idea. So either start from beginning to end.
Or you can go by shifts. Now, a lot of poems are going to have a distinct shift, and that's either going to be by attitude or by idea. And that's a good way to structure your essay. You can talk about the attitude before the shift and then the attitude after the shift, which also helps you go in chronological order instead of kind of by device. Because I know a lot of people are taught in their younger schooling years,
such as AP Lang,
to structure a 5-paragraph essay. And there's nothing wrong with a 5-paragraph essay. You just can't make it look like a formulaic essay. You have to be organic in your writing. And it's okay to have a 6 or 7 paragraph essay or a 3 or 4 paragraph essay. You just need to make sure all your ideas are there and that it's very free-flowing, not so formulaic.
Okay, so next you're going to start writing your essay. So you're going to start with an intro. And in the intro, you're going to start with a general statement about life that connects to the poem. After the general statement, you're going to put in a summary about the poem, but you don't want it to seem like a summary. So just talk about the major ideas throughout the poem. And after that, you're going to put in your thesis that also connects to the theme. So after that, you're going to start the body of your essay and go through it chronologically or by idea. And throughout the essay, you're going to want to include evidence, like direct quotes from the poem, and you're going to want to integrate them into your writing. So only include about like 2 or 3 words and just make them flow right through the sentence, because that just shows how much more of a developed writer you are. And you're also going to connect all of this evidence to the theme. But remember, don't say theme. You want to say supports, blah, 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 blah.
And when you include quotes, make sure you are analyzing them after. Like, don't just include a quote and then completely disregard it after. Make sure you're talking about the language of the quote or how this connects to what the author thinks. Just make sure you include 1 to 2 sentences after the quote, kind of analyzing it, and that'll really take your essay into the deeper meaning portion and not just the surface level.
Right, and these quotes are going to be examples from the body of poetry that are figurative language or literary devices. After you do all that, you're going to want to go on to your conclusion. Now, in the conclusion, you're going to want to state the main points throughout your essay, and you're going to want to restate your thesis and connect it to the theme. Bring it full circle, all the way around, and that is how you tackle the Q1
Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about the Q2 prompt. First, you need to know how to analyze, so you're going to want to identify the author, title, genre, time period, main characters, plot and its structure, and literary devices, especially figurative language. Some tips on how to get a 9 on the prose passage is to underline key terms in the prompt and in the passage. You're also going to especially write in present tense, craft a clear thesis with devices and the total meaning included, use quotes to justify your responses to the prompt, and avoid vague statements. When writing the prose essay, you can organize by idea, chronologically, or device. I would personally recommend organizing by order of the passage because the graders tend to favor this method. It's easier for them to comprehend what you're writing rather than organizing by device or idea. When the graders read your essay, they're going to scale it from 1 through 9. The essay portion of this test is 55% of your exam score, so it's going to count more than the multiple choice. And when they're reading your essays, they're going to look at the depth of your analysis, the clear thesis, how you incorporate evidence, and also how well you executed the entire essay overall.
So now on to Q3, which is the very last question. And most AP students consider this the easy question because there's no text to read, but you've actually already read the text previously in class or maybe in previous years. And so what you're going to see when you flip to Q3 is you're going to see a prompt, and then you're going to see a list of major literary works. And the important thing to remember is that you can pick any major literary work that you want. It does not have to be from that list. I know many students freak out when they don't see the book that they have in mind in the list, but if there's a book that you know is of literary merit and is not in that list but connects to the prompt, go ahead and use it. Don't be afraid to go outside the list that they give you.
It's also important to have a couple of books in your mind with some main points that you can use in your essay just to prepare yourself.
Yeah, so some preparation before leading up to the exam. A good thing is to make a major work data sheet, which is where you take all the literary works that you've read maybe in that year or from 11th grade, and you just go through, you name all the important characters, name the settings, the themes, and then the really developing points in the book, kind of just to refresh your memory about what happens. So that way you're right to it. You don't have to spend 10 minutes thinking about what happened in the book. You already know it.
It's also important to remember the author's name.
Yes.
Because if you don't know the author's name, then you're just going to be saying the author throughout the entire essay, and that just looks unprofessional.
Basically, the more you know about the book before the test, the better your writing is going to be, and the quicker you'll be able to write your essay. So now that you've looked at it, the first thing that you're going to do is look at the prompt. And a lot of the prompts have to do with life itself, like maybe a gift you're given or a relationship in life. Okay, so when you're reading the prompt, a book's going to pop into your mind that fits what the prompt is asking you to do. And so, for instance, if they were going to talk about relationships between sisters, Pride and Prejudice, easy, you got it. So then go ahead and write Pride and Prejudice down and just jot a few things down that you already know about the book, because that'll just help you stay on track. And then you need to identify what the prompt is asking you to do. If it's saying talk about a relationship, for instance, you need to talk about one specific relationship and figure out what in that book correlates directly to the prompt, because I promise you there's a book for every prompt. So once you have your theme, you're going to use the plot of the book and the details that happen within the book to support your thesis and the theme that you're trying to go for. So something that always helps me is to, once I have my theme identified, I then jot down a couple supporting points from the book on my prompt sheet. That way when I go to my essay, I can just flip back to it and look at those and make sure I hit all those points.
A different thing about Q3 is that your evidence are events that have happened in the book. So you're not going to be having any verbatim quotations. You're typically just going to be talking about something that happened, which is called plot summary. But you want to make sure you don't do too much of this. So once you say a point that happened in the book, make sure you analyze it and connect it to the theme.
Yes, it's very easy in this essay especially to have a bunch of plot summary, and you don't need that at all. You need a little bit maybe to make sure the readers know what part of the book you're talking about, but don't include 1 or 2 paragraphs describing the book. They've already read the book, they know what it's about, they don't need a whole plot summary about it. So the second thing you're gonna wanna do in your body paragraphs is make sure that you have a voice in your essay. You can portray that through kind of your analysis of the book and what happens, but you need to comment on the author and why they wrote the book and their motivations, because that'll help you get to the deeper level meaning, and that also helps you have a voice in the essay, because a lot of students only get to that 5 because there's no voice or interpretation of the work. And so it's really important through the little bit of plot summary that you have after it to kind of explain the author's motives and thinking and attitude toward the specific prompt that you have. Like if it's relationships again with Pride and Prejudice, you need to dive deeper into why Jane Austen wrote Pride and Prejudice and what she's trying to say about relationships. Because if you can include that little bit about kind of the author's purpose, that will really help your essay have a little oomph in it and really, really bring you to that 8 or 9 level. So the conclusion of the Q3 is kind of your spot to make sure you have everything in your essay. If you haven't talked about meaning of the work as a whole or theme or anything, but you are running out of time, you really need to include theme and meaning of the work as a whole. Even if it's putting it in there for 2 sentences, it's really crucial to your writing. And I know a lot of students will wait and do Q3 for the last one because they think it's the easiest, so they'd rather get the harder ones out. But in my personal opinion, I would say do Q3 first, because that's one that you know you can knock out and hopefully get an 8 or a 9 on and really boost up your FRQ scores, because it's frustrating for students when they get to Q3 and they know what to write about, but they're out of time. So my advice to you would be write this first, especially if it's a prompt that you know and you know that you've read this book before and you can really connect it and get a lot of points there. Definitely do that first.
And that
We
are
out.
the FRQs.